Pennsylvania since they read the Declaration of Independence there in 1776. Asked, did they do that? Did they read it there in 1776?
Yeah, I went on Wikipedia, and Easton, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and I forget where the third place is, were the first three places that the Declaration was publicly read to, somebody on the corner reading at the top of their lungs.
Wow. That's terrifically impressive. And Michael R. lives there. Huh. As Jimmy Stewart used to say, well, what do you know about that? Hi, Matt. Hope all is well with you and your... Oh, yeah, this was funny. Thank you for keeping the peace at Amok. You don't see yourself as keeping the peace at Amok?
I see myself as waking up and going, not today. And then, going to work or something, and then coming home and going, oh, yeah, I have to deal with that thing.
Okay.
Lately, there's an anonymous commenter who comes on and posts Nazi, hateful, anti-Jew, anti-black, anti-me, Carson, and Margaret bullcrap, and I have to delete his comments, and it's usually like 7, 8 comments within 5 minutes, and then I lock commenting down so that I have to approve everything, and then he goes away for a couple weeks, and then like Beetlejuice, he pops up again. And on the one hand, I don't want anybody seeing this crap because it's crap. I mean, it's, I'm trying to remember. One of them I actually laughed about. It was something about me being gay and then wondering if my wife, and I'm thinking, if I'm gay, how come I have a wife?
Right.
But so on the one hand, it's offensive crap that, take it off because it's not anything about Service or Dave Sim or Gerhard or anything. And on the other hand, approval is an authoritarian construct, and if I have to approve it, that makes me an authoritarian.
Right.
So I lock it for a day or two, and then I'm like, I don't want to do this. This isn't what I signed up for. And then I unlock everything, and everybody's cool for a little bit, and then 2-3 weeks go by, and this guy shows up, and it's all right, back to lockdown.
So he sends like a bunch of them.
He'll comment on like 7 or 8 different posts, and it's always it's not like it's it's usually 1 or 2 sentences, and it's just like Jews are evil, make them into lampshades. Trying to think, one of them was Gerhard's right, and then something that was anti-Jewish. I'm like, Gerhard would never say something anti-Jew. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that has strong political opinions that he would tell anybody.
Right.
Gerhard's a nice guy. Dave's a nice guy. I'm just. I mean, it started. The first one started with Ben Hobbs managed to catch him and delete some of them, but one of them, it sounded like it may have been me being self-depreciating, and I'm like, no, that wasn't me. Yeah, delete that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's, I think that's really all you can do is realize this is just the Johnny Appleseed of hot buttons sort of thing. He just goes hither and yon, scattering his toxic hot button provocations wherever he can find a place that they'll let him do it. And, that's really the downside of freedom of expression is you can't shut down everything like that, but I think you can at the least say, well, okay, here's a funny one, or here's why I think this is a funny one. And I think that's one of the points that we have to get to is that the people who are addicted to hitting everybody's hot button are actually pretty funny. Like, it's a very funny thing to do because it's lets you and him fight. It's not, I want to pick a fight with you. It's no, I just want to create friction and discord wherever I can. Okay, so back to Michael R. This was funny that he's got this the question about Jockus said to Cerebus, and then you tell him, okay, Dave already talked about this in the introduction, and here's the quote from it. But it's interesting to visit the Old Gufo, What a Mess. On October 26, 1921, when Zelda gave birth to her and Scott's daughter and only child, Frances Scotty Fitzgerald. As she emerged from the anesthesia, he recorded Zelda saying, "Oh God, Gufo, I'm drunk. Mark Twain. Isn't she smart? She has the hiccups. I hope it's beautiful and a fool. A beautiful little fool." And it's like, that's very self-revelatory, I think, of Zelda's personality. But then there was only one Zelda Sayre Fitzgerald. One of the things that I would note is if your wife has a nickname for you that's Gufo, that's not a good sign. It's, if it's an affectionate nickname and a cute nickname, that's fine. If it's something that says you're stupid and I'm smart, I would really be wary of that. But then Zelda was quite a looker, so there was very little that Scott was wary about. This has got another interesting resonance to it. I'm going to skip down to, I also found this about Fitzgerald in Wikipedia. Fitzgerald worked on 2 weeks of unused dialogue on loan out to David Selznick for Gone with the Wind 1939, for which he received no credit. And yes, indeed, this seems to me in comic art metaphysics terms one of those things where trying to figure out, okay, what was the largest metaphysics around here? And I think there was a large metaphysical impulse in the 1920s, and certainly post-World War I. I don't know which of those is the more relevant point, probably post-World War I, to try and find a female writer and a male writer, and that they would write together, and by doing that, they would bring about a great, not compromise, consolidation of the two gender viewpoints. Who could be better than an accomplished writer to do that? It's like, is that a rhetorical question? Because we can do that. And I think that's what happened with Scott and Zelda. And it just became an intellectual bloodbath, with Zelda coming out definitely on the raw side of that one. I would agree that she went insane, but I would say that Scott Fitzgerald drove her insane. That they were both, that essentially that's what they got to the point of. Either Zelda was going to drive Scott insane, or Scott was going to drive Zelda insane. And Scott won that one because Zelda was the one who ended up in the institution, not Scott, which means he was able to appear less crazy than he was, and consequently have all of the doctors and the courts on his side. And Zelda wasn't able to do that and ended up institutionalized for the rest of her life. So she has the hiccups is the thing that I hadn't really noticed before, because I think the same thing happened with John Marsh and Margaret Mitchell, where they were intended to be the writing couple, where John as a intrepid reporter for the Atlanta Journal and Margaret Mitchell as an intrepid reporter for the Atlanta Journal would write at each other and achieve this great gender balance stasis, because who better than two intellectual writers to accomplish that? And it's like, again, is this a rhetorical question? Because we can enact that, which they did with John Marsh and Margaret Mitchell. And John Marsh just became Margaret Mitchell's galley slave, basically her chief of staff and major domo, who takes care of all of the Gone with the Wind translation business, while Margaret Mitchell sits around writing letters to people. And it's like, that killed John Marsh. It destroyed his health. So that was, Scott won, Zelda lost, Margaret Mitchell won, John Marsh lost. But both of them were colossal losses in the sense of, well, if you're looking at this as a way of finding a happy meeting ground between the genders, that didn't work so good. I do admire Zelda's writing. I mean, even the fact that she's coming out from under an anesthetic and she says Mark Twain, it's like, that's very lucid. She's talking about how deep she is in the anesthetic, how drunk she is, because Samuel Clemens got the name Mark Twain from the steamboat terminology for how deep the water was under the steamboat on the Mississippi River. So for her to say, "Oh God, Gufo, I'm drunk," Mark Twain, that's terrifically impressive. That's a high level of intellect and a high level of wit, even when you're really not in compo mentis. And I don't know, maybe that was something that they signaled to each other. Mark Twain was what you said when you realized that you were drunker than you intended to be and drunker than you should be. But in terms of how that connects Scott Fitzgerald and Zelda with Margaret Mitchell and John Marsh, Margaret Mitchell wrote a column for the Atlanta Journal Sunday magazine, one of the last columns that she wrote, about disastrous instances of hiccups that lasted for days, hours, weeks, or whatever. And sure enough, as soon as she and John Marsh got engaged, she was now divorced from Upshaw and was marrying John Marsh. John Marsh got the hiccups, and got the hiccups for days or weeks on end, and was almost destroyed by that. And it's like, John, I would have taken a hint. This is not really going to pan out. And the fact that that happened, what was that, 1924, 25, and in 1921, coming out from anesthetic, Zelda saying she has the hiccups. I hope it's beautiful and a fool, a beautiful little fool. I think that's you could probably use that to describe all four of them: John Marsh, Scott Fitzgerald, Margaret Mitchell, and Zelda. And then that connects, of course, obviously, to Fitzgerald doing the legendary 2 weeks of unused dialogue work on Gone with the Wind. It's okay. You beat Zelda. Margaret beat John Marsh, but Margaret beat you because not only did you have to work on her book, adapting it for the films, you weren't credited, and none of your work was used. So, yeah, the women win, kind of thing. So it was funny, yeah. Then you quoted the introduction, so I'm hoping that by imparting these more esoteric observations, it's like Michael isn't going away empty on this, and to make sure that he's not going away empty on this, then he commented about Foreman Void 597, 598. Cerebus is running through the snowstorm and has a hallucination or dream of Rick. Rick's giving Cerebus directions on how to get over the ridge. Then an older Rick appears and says to Cerebus, "We'll see each other once more after today." The something, this is scratched out, around with the something also scratched out, and something scratched out again. But as yet, something scratched out for the fourth time, or something scratched out the last time. Come and see. Cerebus then said, "Oh, S -T, that's right. Cerebus already saw." And of course, then you email Michael the page that explains that this is what was said, and then sent him chapter the 14th. Michael goes, "Sigh, you're good. That's why you run Ammon. Nothing except racist stuff, laugh out loud, gets by you. Strike two, I'll quit while I'm ahead. Just tell Dave that I hope he had a great birthday. So Michael hopes you had a great birthday." And I haven't reread chapter the 14th, I don't think, since I wrote it. And again, so Michael doesn't go away empty-handed. I do have actual biblical references in chapter the 14th. The prophet Rick, fulfilling the promise he had made in the sanctuary, appeared unto Cerebus in the spirit, speaking unto Cerebus and saying, and being in the spirit is a term that John the Evangelist uses in Revelation to indicate that he's not in his body, he's in his spirit. The waters abound with the new and faithful, but as yet the fishers are few. Come and see. Now, what I'm doing there is actually fusing the Synoptic Jesus and the Johannine Jesus. The idea of fishers, of men as fishers, that's the Synoptic Jesus. That's in Matthew 4:19, where he says to the disciples, "And I will make you fishers of men," as opposed to fishers of fish, which is phrased slightly differently in Mark 1:17. "I will make you to become fishers of men." And that would be an interesting discussion, just discussing what the difference in those comments are. Well, the difference between "I will make you fishers of men" and "I will make you to become fishers of men." Making someone to become something is different from making that person something. And then "come and see" is from John's Gospel 1:39, which he addresses to Andrew and the unnamed disciples who are following the Johannine Jesus and want to know where he is remaining. And he says, "See you coming, and you will see." And I translate it in the conventional sense of "come and see," which isn't, again, what he's actually saying. The concept of "be you coming, and you will and see, and you will see" is very different from the concept of "come and see," and particularly as regards the Johannine Jesus. I'm just coming up on that point now. I'll be starting my commentaries on chapter 3, and it's like, no, this is an important distinction. I am arriving is different from I have arrived. Arriving is a process taking place. So it's interesting rereading my work and going, oh wow, I didn't know that I was that far along in my distinctions between the Synoptic Jesus and the Johannine Jesus, and using the two of them myself. So I got a good laugh when I got to chapter 14, verse 10. Come and see, and if Cerebus does answer unto the drowning guys, then you know that it's the actual deal. This is the Cerebus, because he has no idea what baptism is. Looking at what's going on, it just looked like Jesus and his disciples were drowning guys, which is another reference from the Johannine Jesus, beginning of chapter 4, which oddly enough is where I am in my reading right now. As therefore knew the Lord that heard the Pharisees that Jesus more disciples and is making and is baptizing than John. And then verse 2 is a subordinate clause. Although indeed Jesus, he not was baptizing, but the disciples of him. That's interesting. Again, that's although indeed Jesus himself did no baptizing, but his disciples did, is how it's traditionally translated. It could be that, or it could also be, although in Jesus he not was baptizing, but the disciples of him, he only baptized his disciples. And that's not conveyed by, although indeed Jesus himself did no baptizing, but his disciples did, which is why I always try to go back to the word for word literal translation, because the way it's phrased, there's two different meanings there. The way it's traditionally translated, there's one meaning. And anytime you close off a meaning through your translation, then you're changing scripture, and you're changing what is presumably, all of us monotheists believe, the Word of God. So there you go. Like I say, Michael didn't want to see it go away empty.